Diana heard Charles's cold voice when she answered the phone. "There's an opera today," he had said. "Mandatory attendance." Diana's heart sank. 6 months had passed since the nightclub disaster, but Charles hadn't forgotten. Every week, a new cultural activity. Every month, a new traditional duty. Diana understood this was revenge warfare. Because she had embarrassed him that night, now Charles was tightening the screws on her at every opportunity. "I can do fun activities too," Diana had said desperately. "But these are from your world," Charles had replied with a cold smile. "You must learn." And Diana understood that her husband was determined to systematically imprison her in his world. This was the price for the public humiliation of that nightclub evening, and Charles had planned every detail. Immediately after the nightclub disaster, Charles's attitude had changed. After that night's silent car ride home, Charles had gone directly to his study when they returned. When Diana followed him, she saw her husband sitting at his desk, hands pressed to his head, thinking. "Charles, we need to talk," Diana had said. "Tonight went very badly, but—" Charles had raised his hand. "There's nothing to discuss. This evening was a perfect lesson. You and I are fundamentally different people, and clearly, your approach doesn't work." Diana had tried to approach. "I'm sorry you felt uncomfortable. I just wanted us to have fun together." Charles had laughed coldly. "Fun? Diana, I am the Prince of Wales. Fun means different things for me. And apparently, your concept of fun and mine are completely incompatible." In the days following that night, Charles had been distant and formal. At breakfast, he would read the newspaper, have minimal conversation with Diana, and immediately return to his duties. Diana had initially been relieved. At least he wasn't angry, just cold. But she didn't realize Charles was planning. 2 weeks later, the first move came. Charles told Diana, "We have a cultural commitment tomorrow evening, Royal Opera House, Wagner performance." Diana was surprised. "Opera? We haven't discussed this." Charles was firm. "I'm informing you, not discussing. This is our duty. As royals, we must support traditional British culture, something you clearly need more exposure to." The evening was painfully long. 4-hour Wagner performance, German language, complex classical themes Diana couldn't follow. Throughout the entire evening, Charles appeared attentive, explaining program notes, discussing cultural significance, showing proper appreciation. But Diana knew it was a performance. He was making a point. "Did you enjoy it?" he asked afterwards. Diana, honestly, "It was educational, but not really my style." Charles's satisfied smile. "Style can be acquired through proper exposure, through education, through commitment to excellence." Diana realized this was the beginning. The following week, another cultural assignment. "Classical concert tonight," Charles announced. "London Symphony Orchestra, Beethoven's Symphony Cycle. Very important for cultural development." Diana protested. "Charles, I had plans to see friends tonight." Charles was cold. "Cancel them. This is priority. We have an image to maintain, standards to uphold. After recent experiments, we must refocus on appropriate activities." The word experiments was deliberately chosen, referring to the nightclub disaster. Diana understood the punishment had begun. At the concert, Charles again played the perfect cultural guide, explaining symphonic structure, historical context, musical techniques. But his tone was patronizing, condescending, like teaching a child, making Diana feel ignorant, uncultured, inadequate. "This is real music. he whispered during the interval. This is art that lasts centuries, not temporary pop culture nonsense. Diana felt attacked but couldn't object publicly. She was trapped. The third week brought an art gallery opening. Renaissance Masters exhibition, Charles informed. Essential cultural experience. We'll spend the entire afternoon. Diana had planned shopping with friends, a modern art gallery visit. Can we do this another time? She asked. Charles was firm. Diana, cultural education cannot be postponed. You clearly need guidance in artistic appreciation. This is for your own development. At the gallery, Charles provided running commentary on each painting, technique, historical significance, artistic movement context. But again, his tone was patronizing, making Diana feel like a student being lectured, not a wife being shared with. Real art, he emphasized repeatedly. Timeless beauty, not like the modern rubbish you prefer. Diana began understanding the pattern. This wasn't sharing culture. This was punishment. Charles was systematically exposing her to everything she found boring, difficult, intimidating. Making her feel stupid, making her pay. But what was truly shocking was that Charles wouldn't stop with just cultural activities, but would begin controlling Diana's entire social life. The fourth week, Diana received a call from her friend Sarah. Want to go dancing this Saturday? A new club opened in Chelsea? Diana was excited. Yes, I need a fun night out. But when she told Charles, his response was icy. Absolutely not. We have a commitment Saturday evening, private dinner with the Duke and Duchess of Marlborough, cultural discussion about their art collection. Diana was frustrated. Charles, I never agreed to this dinner. Charles was patronizing. Diana, I make our social commitments based on what's appropriate for people in our position. Dancing in clubs is not appropriate. Cultivated conversation about art and history is appropriate. Diana realized Charles was deliberately blocking her social plans, replacing them with boring, formal activities she hated, isolating her from friends who shared her interests. I want to maintain some friendships, Diana protested. Charles was dismissive. The wrong type of friendships apparently lead to the wrong type of activities. You need better influences, more cultured companions. Diana felt trapped. Every plan she made, Charles countered with cultural duty. Every friend she wanted to see, Charles found reason to disapprove. Every modern activity she enjoyed, Charles labeled inappropriate. The fifth week, the pattern intensified. Monday, historical lecture at the British Museum. Tuesday, classical theater production. Wednesday, art history seminar. Thursday, traditional music recital. Friday, cultural dinner with academics. Saturday, opera again. Diana was exhausted. Charles, this is too much. I need variety. I need fun activities. Charles was mock concerned. Diana, culture is fun, if you approach it correctly, with the proper attitude, with willingness to learn. Diana was desperate. But I want to see friends, go places I enjoy, do things that make me happy. Charles was cold. Your happiness shouldn't depend on frivolous pursuits. True satisfaction comes from intellectual growth, cultural appreciation, meaningful engagement with serious subjects. Diana understood. Charles was re-educating her, forcing his values, his interests, his world upon her, systematically eliminating everything she enjoyed. The sixth week, Charles introduced a new rule. From now on, we attend cultural events together. Always. No separate social activities. We present a united front as a couple committed to proper pursuits. Diana was completely trapped. No escape to the modern world, No friends who shared her tastes. No activities she enjoyed. Only Charles's world. Formal, traditional, boring, intimidating. At the 7th week's poetry reading, Diana broke down privately. Sarah approached afterwards. "Diana, you look miserable. What's wrong?" Diana whispered, "Charles is punishing me for the nightclub incident. He's forcing me into his world exclusively. I can't do anything I enjoy anymore." Sarah was shocked. "That's controlling behavior. You should resist." Diana felt hopeless. How? "He uses royal duty as an excuse, says it's for my cultural development, says it's appropriate behavior for my position. I can't argue without looking unreasonable." Sarah was worried. "This isn't healthy, Diana. Marriage shouldn't be punishment." But Diana felt powerless. Charles had perfect cover: cultural education, royal responsibility, appropriate behavior, all reasonable sounding, all impossible to oppose publicly. This was exactly when everything changed. Because when Diana finally understood Charles's real plan, she would decide to show resistance, and this would take the power struggle to a completely different level. The 8th week, Diana discovered Charles's real strategy when she overheard a phone conversation with his friend Nicholas. "Working perfectly," Charles was saying. "She's completely out of her element. Every event I choose specifically to make her uncomfortable. Opera in German, classical music she can't appreciate, art history she doesn't understand, intellectual conversations she can't follow. She's realizing her limitations." Nicholas: "Isn't this a bit harsh?" Charles was cold. "She embarrassed me publicly, made me look foolish. Now she's learning the consequences, learning her place, learning that her world is superficial, temporary, meaningless. My world is substantial, permanent, important." Diana felt sick. This wasn't cultural education. This was systematic humiliation, deliberate psychological punishment. Charles was methodically destroying her confidence, her happiness, her sense of self. That evening, Diana confronted him. "I heard your conversation with Nicholas." Charles was unfazed. "Did you? Good. Then you understand this is an educational process. You need to learn proper values." Diana was angry. "This is revenge, pure revenge. You're punishing me for the nightclub evening." Charles was calm. "I'm correcting you. You showed poor judgment, inappropriate behavior. Now you're learning better standards." Diana fought back. "By making me miserable, by isolating me from friends, by forcing me into activities I hate." Charles was justified. "By exposing you to quality experiences, by surrounding you with cultured people, by teaching you what's truly valuable." Diana was desperate. "Charles, this is destroying me. I'm losing myself. I'm becoming someone I don't recognize." Charles was satisfied. "You're becoming someone appropriate. Someone worthy of your position. Someone who understands duty over pleasure." Diana realized Charles believed he was saving her from herself. In his mind, she was culturally inferior, intellectually limited, emotionally immature. He was fixing her, improving her, making her suitable. But Diana knew the truth. He was breaking her, systematically, deliberately, and enjoying it. The 9th week, Diana attempted resistance. "I'm not going to tonight's lecture," she announced. Charles was dangerously quiet. "Excuse me?" Diana was brave. "I'm staying home, reading a magazine, watching television. Normal evening." Charles was cold with fury. "Diana, we have a commitment, public appearance, cultural responsibility." Diana was firm. "Go without me, make an excuse. I'm not participating in this anymore." Charles escalated. "This is not optional. This is duty. You will come." Diana stood her ground. "No, I won't. I'm done being your cultural project." Charles played his trump card. "Very well. I'll inform Her Majesty that you're refusing royal duties due to preference for frivolous entertainment. Shall I schedule a meeting for you to explain your position?" Diana was trapped. She couldn't explain to the Queen that Charles was psychologically tormenting her under the guise of cultural education. It would sound petty, ungrateful, inappropriate. Charles continued, "Perhaps you'd prefer to explain to the press why the Princess of Wales considers British cultural institutions beneath her attention." Diana was defeated. "You know I can't do that." Charles was satisfied. "Then you'll attend, and you'll be gracious and appreciative, and you'll learn." Diana attended. But something had broken inside her. The 10th week, Diana stopped fighting. She became compliant, quiet, withdrawn. She attended every event Charles scheduled, listened to every lecture, smiled appropriately. But inside, she was disappearing. Charles noticed the change with satisfaction. "You're finally adapting," he said approvingly. "Learning proper behavior, developing better judgment." But Diana's friends noticed a different change. Sarah called, worried. "Diana, you seem so sad lately. So subdued." Diana was hollow. "I'm learning my place, learning appropriate behavior, learning to be a suitable wife." Sarah was alarmed. "That doesn't sound like you talking." Diana was empty. Maybe the real me wasn't suitable. Maybe Charles is right. Maybe I need to change completely. Charles was winning. Diana's spirit was breaking. Her confidence was shattered. Her joy was extinguished. She was becoming what he wanted: compliant, cultured, controlled. But the victory was hollow, because the wife he was creating wasn't the wife he'd married, wasn't the woman he'd loved. It was an empty shell performing a prescribed role. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. Because Charles's systematic control wouldn't just change Diana, but would also plant the seeds of revenge plans within her. The 11th week, Diana had a realization while sitting through a boring archaeology lecture Charles had insisted she attend. As the professor droned about ancient civilizations, Diana thought, "I'm becoming ancient too. A museum piece. Something displayed for approval, but not actually alive." She looked at Charles, who was genuinely engaged, taking notes, asking questions. This was his natural element, but it was slowly killing her spirit. That night, Diana made a decision. If Charles wanted to play cultural warfare, she could play too. But her version would be different. "Charles," she said sweetly, "I've been thinking. You're right about cultural education. I should learn more." Charles was pleased. Finally, what prompted this change? Diana was innocent. "Your guidance has been so valuable. I realize I've been resisting instead of embracing. So I want to increase my cultural activities." Charles was suspicious, but pleased. "What do you have in mind?" Diana was strategic. "Well, I should understand all forms of culture, shouldn't I? Including contemporary culture, modern art, current social movements, youth culture, to be truly educated?" Charles was trapped. "Well, yes, complete education includes understanding all cultural movements, even contemporary ones." Diana had a sweet smile. "Wonderful. So you won't mind if I attend modern art exhibitions, youth cultural events, contemporary music performances? For educational purposes, of course." Charles realized the trap, but couldn't escape without contradicting his own educational arguments. Diana continued, "And I should meet people involved in modern culture, artists, musicians, performers, to understand contemporary movements properly?" Charles was uncomfortable. I suppose, for genuine educational purposes. Diana had turned his weapon against him. If he refused, he'd be admitting his cultural education claims were really just control mechanisms. The 12th week, Diana began her counteroffensive. She scheduled educational visits to modern art galleries, contemporary theater productions, youth culture centers, all defensible as cultural education, all technically fitting Charles's criteria. But these activities brought her contact with people from her preferred world: artists, performers, creative types who valued spontaneity over tradition, expression over restraint, joy over duty. Charles grew suspicious as Diana's energy returned. "You seem very animated by these contemporary cultural studies," he observed. Diana was innocent. "Oh, yes, I'm learning so much about modern artistic movements. The creativity is incredible. The passion for expression, the freedom of interpretation." Charles didn't like the direction this was heading. Diana continued, "And the people are so interesting, so alive, so committed to their art. Nothing like the stuffy academics at your lectures." Charles used a warning tone. "Diana, remember, these are educational exercises, not social opportunities." Diana was sweet. "Of course, purely educational. Though I am learning that modern culture has its own sophistication, its own depth, its own value." Charles realized his educational argument was backfiring. Diana was using cultural exploration to justify her return to her preferred world. The 13th week, Diana expanded her program. "I think I need to understand youth culture better," she announced. "How young people express themselves culturally today." This meant clubs, music venues, dance events, all justified as anthropological research into contemporary social movements. Charles was frustrated. "This is not what I meant by cultural education." Diana was innocent. "But Charles, you said complete education requires understanding all cultural expressions. Youth culture is a significant cultural force. I should study it properly." Charles was trapped by his own arguments. Diana was regaining confidence, reconnecting with her world, rebuilding her spirit. But more dangerously, she was meeting people who validated her natural inclinations, who made her feel valuable as she was, not as Charles wanted to reshape her. The 14th week, Charles attempted to regain control. "I think you've done enough contemporary cultural research," he announced. Diana challenged. "Why? I'm just getting started. There's so much to learn about modern artistic expression." Charles was direct. "Because you're spending too much time with inappropriate people, in inappropriate places." This was meant to be controlled education, not social rebellion. Diana revealed her hand. "Ah, so this was never about cultural education. This was about control. About forcing me into your world while denying me mine." Charles was caught. "That's not. This is about proper standards." Diana was sharp. "No, Charles. This is about punishment, about making me pay for embarrassing you, about breaking my spirit until I become an obedient wife who never challenges you." Charles admitted partial truth. "You needed to learn about appropriate behavior, about your responsibilities." Diana's understanding was finally complete. "I needed to be punished, broken, rebuilt in your image. Well, congratulations, you nearly succeeded." Charles sensed danger. "Diana, don't be dramatic. I was helping you develop." Diana was clear now. "You were destroying me, systematically, deliberately, using cultural superiority as a weapon, making me feel stupid, inadequate, worthless." Charles was defensive. "I was showing you better things, higher quality experiences." Diana was fierce. You were showing me prison. Beautiful, cultured prison, but prison nonetheless. Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail. Because Diana's complete understanding of Charles's revenge plan wouldn't just make her rebel, but would also lead her to develop her own long-term freedom strategy. Diana could now see Charles's entire strategy. The public humiliation of that nightclub evening had wounded Charles deeply. Not just his pride, but it had challenged his entire worldview. Diana's modern, spontaneous, joyful approach to life had been seen as a threat to Charles's carefully constructed traditional framework. "You know what I realized?" Diana said quietly that night. "That night at the club, you weren't embarrassed because people laughed. You were terrified because you saw how happy I was in that environment. How natural, how myself." Charles was defensive. "That environment was inappropriate," Diana continued. "And you realized that your world, opera, classical music, formal dinners, intellectual conversations, none of that makes me happy. None of that feeds my soul." Charles was uncomfortable. "Happiness isn't the only consideration." Diana was sharp. "For you, perhaps. But I deserve happiness. I deserve to be myself, not some cultured automaton you're trying to create." Charles fell silent because Diana had hit the core truth. His revenge hadn't been just about punishment. It had been about transformation, about making her into someone who would never again challenge his worldview, never again expose his limitations, never again make him feel inadequate. "So what happens now?" Charles asked finally. Diana thought carefully. She could declare war, fight openly, create public drama, but that would damage everyone: herself, Charles, the monarchy, their children. Or she could be smarter. "Now," Diana said slowly, "we find balance, real balance. Not your cultural dictatorship disguised as education. Not my complete rejection of your world, but actual compromise." Charles was skeptical. "What does that mean?" Diana outlined. "It means I attend some of your cultural events, the ones I can genuinely appreciate or learn from. And you respect that I need my own cultural experiences: modern art, contemporary music, young people's energy." Charles was resistant. That's what led to the nightclub disaster. Diana was firm. "No. What led to disaster was forcing an inappropriate activity without preparation or understanding. If you want to share your world, share it properly. If I want to share mine, I'll do it appropriately." Charles was considering, "And if we can't agree?" Diana was quiet but strong. "Then we live separate cultural lives, together in public, apart in personal interests. A marriage of convenience rather than a marriage of hearts." Charles understood the threat. "That's not what I want." Diana was honest. "Then stop trying to control me. Stop punishing me. Stop trying to remake me into your ideal wife. Accept who I am, or lose me entirely." The conversation marked a turning point. Charles realized his revenge had backfired. Instead of breaking Diana, it had made her stronger, more self-aware, more determined to maintain her identity. Diana realized her power. She could leave, could create scandal, could expose Charles's controlling behavior. But she also realized that the relationship was salvageable if both sides compromised genuinely. The 15th week marked a new phase. Charles attended a modern art exhibition with Diana, not to punish or lecture, but to genuinely try understanding her aesthetic preferences. Diana attended opera with Charles, not under duress, but choosing a performance she might actually enjoy, with preparation that helped her appreciate the experience. Both were still uncomfortable in each other's worlds, but no longer using culture as a weapon. Charles learned Diana's joy in modern experiences wasn't childish or superficial. It was authentic expression of her nature, spontaneous, emotionally direct, celebration of human energy and creativity. Diana learned Charles's love of traditional culture wasn't just snobbery. It was genuine appreciation for historical continuity, artistic excellence, intellectual depth. Both learned they were fundamentally different people who could respect each other's differences without trying to eliminate them. But scars remained. Trust was damaged. Intimacy was reduced. The marriage became more partnership than passion. Now you've seen nothing. Because Charles's revenge campaign didn't just change the immediate marriage dynamics, but also shaped Diana's future relationship patterns. Diana's experience of systematic psychological control by someone who claimed to love her taught her important lessons about relationships, power, and self-preservation. She learned to recognize controlling behavior disguised as care, education, or improvement. When future relationships showed similar patterns, she identified them quickly. She learned the importance of maintaining her own identity, interests, and social connections, regardless of her partner's preferences. Never again would she allow someone to isolate her from her own world. She learned that compromise required genuine mutual respect, not one person forcing change on another. Real partnership meant each person bringing their authentic self, not performing an expected role. Most importantly, she learned that love shouldn't diminish you, control you, or require you to abandon who you are. True love accepts, celebrates, and supports your genuine nature. Charles's cultural education campaign, intended to make Diana a more suitable wife, instead made her a more independent woman. His attempt to control her taught her to value her freedom. His systematic undermining of her confidence taught her to trust her own judgment. Ironically, Charles created exactly what he'd tried to prevent: a wife who wouldn't be controlled, wouldn't be remade, wouldn't sacrifice herself for his vision of appropriate behavior. Diana emerged from this period stronger, but sadder. She'd lost innocence about marriage, about Charles, about the possibility of unconditional acceptance from her husband. But she'd gained something valuable, too: clear understanding of her own worth, her own needs, her own right to happiness and authenticity. The marriage continued, but on different terms: more guarded, more carefully negotiated, more protective of individual autonomy. Charles learned, too, that control achieved through punishment creates compliance, not love. That forcing change creates resistance, not growth. That winning a power struggle can mean losing a relationship. Both learned that revenge in marriage is a Pyrrhic victory. You may get compliance, but you lose connection. You may win control, but you lose intimacy. You won't believe it, but Charles's systematic revenge ultimately taught both of them that marriage cannot survive when one partner tries to fundamentally change the other, but it can survive when both partners learn to respect their differences while finding common ground. The cultural war ended not in victory for either side, but in an uneasy truce. Diana never again tried to drag Charles into environments where he felt fundamentally uncomfortable. Charles never again tried to force Diana to abandon her authentic self. They found middle ground, cultural activities they both enjoyed, social events that honored both traditional and contemporary values, compromises that didn't require either person to sacrifice their essential nature. But the price was high: spontaneity replaced by negotiation, trust replaced by careful boundaries, joy replaced by careful management of differences. The marriage became a successful partnership rather than a passionate love story. Functional rather than fulfilling. Sustainable rather than soul-feeding. Charles got a wife who understood proper behavior. Diana got a husband who respected her autonomy. Both got a relationship that worked publicly and privately, but neither got the deep connection they'd originally hoped for. The revenge succeeded in changing their relationship, but not in the way Charles had planned. Instead of creating a submissive, grateful wife, he'd created an independent, self-protective partner. Instead of proving his cultural superiority, he'd proven his emotional limitations. Instead of strengthening his control, he'd taught Diana to value her freedom. Charles's revenge became Diana's liberation. His attempt to imprison her in his world taught her to value her own world more deeply. His systematic effort to break her spirit taught her how strong her spirit really was. His cultural warfare taught her to fight for her right to be herself. In the end, both learned valuable lessons about respect, autonomy, compromise, and the true meaning of partnership. But they learned them at the cost of innocent love, spontaneous joy, and the possibility of complete acceptance. And so Charles's revenge story comes to an end. A journey from control to freedom. An evolution from punishment to empowerment. A transformation from systematic oppression to personal liberation. A lesson in modern marriage power dynamics. Charles's Pyrrhic victory. Diana's unexpected strength. The collision of two strong wills. The failure of control to defeat love. The importance of respect. This is the bitter but wise end of a perfect marriage lesson.